button, and people only got the last 15 minutes of what we were doing. It's like, oops, sorry, we had a fantastic time, you just don't know. It's you had to be there. Anyway, all right, we're live. Hello, everyone on YouTube as well as Zoom. This is the Virtual Lightning Decision Jam for Healthcare. My name is Robert Scrobe, and I'm the owner-operator of Dallas Design Sprints. I do these lightning decision jams online to kind of showcase the process, but also to give people the chance to sound off and participate on a particular topic that they may have an interest in. What we're going to be doing in the next 90 minutes, first off, is basically going through the process of a virtual lightning decision jam. We're going to be skipping introductions at first. We'll be doing them at the tail end. But after we go through the process, we should have a few topics that the group that's attending within Mural, as well as their panelists in Zoom, we can get an idea of what everyone's thinking about and where they'd like to take things. If you see my eyes darting all over the place during this session, that means I'm handling both people that are coming in late to Zoom or converting people that are just viewing into panelists that didn't have the original link. So there may be some logistics that I'm taking care of the background. But if you do have any questions or if you want to get a hold of me, the best way to do that is just to go through Zoom chat. There's a mechanism within the Zoom client, if you're joining that, where I think chat is either in the 3-dot area or it's down below at the very bottom. Just use that to either message me direct or to basically ask an open-ended question, and I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. So the first thing we'll do is kind of do an overview of the Mural board, and I'm going to be sharing my screen to kind of showcase that. Just give me 1 second, and I'm going to go ahead and put that over. And by the way, any of the panelists, this is one of those things where you don't have to wait for me to ask you a question. If you notice something that I should be kind of paying attention to, then please do give that to my awareness and we'll take care of it. So really fast, let's go over kind of what we're going to be doing. So for those of you who are in the Mural board right now, you may have noticed that I've attempted to put everyone here that had said that they wanted to take part in this process. And all of these pictures here are not just to showcase how lovely people are on LinkedIn. You can actually double click on any one of these individuals to find out what they're all about. I think I gave a little bit of a preview in terms of what they're all about and where they're located. But say like for Dana, if you double click on her, it should bring on your side, it should bring up a LinkedIn profile of what she's all about. And if you're interested, you can also connect with her. You can reach out to her if there's something interesting about her background you want to ask a question about. You're more than welcome to do so. But that was basically as kind of like an idea of who you're going to be working with today and how potentially big this is. Because right now it looks like we have approximately 9 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 people in the Mural right now, which is fantastic. At first I thought we were going to have 15 and it was going to be like, holy cow, I don't even know if I'm going to have enough room in this Mural, but it worked out pretty well. Next off, what we're going to be doing is kind of going sequentially for those who are in the Mural from left to right. So in this lightning decision jam, we're going to be starting in the upper left over here and working our way all the way across to the right and then going down below to the lower left and going down there. And the way this works is if you're not familiar with lightning decision jams, they're meant to be a process where it cuts out conversation and just relies on pure process to get to a certain endpoint. And in this situation, what we're eventually driving towards are 3 particular ideas about healthcare that are really appealing by the group that's participating and where we could potentially take things after we go through this process. But essentially, as an overview, we're going to be thinking about things that are working in healthcare with things that are challenging or not working. And that is the wrong time for that. Go away. We're also, after we look at the problems that we're thinking about for challenges, we're going to prioritize them through affinity diagramming, and then we're going to reframe those problems as how might we's, and I'll get into that a little bit when we hit that part. Once we have the how might we's, we'll arrange them as well here, and we'll take out that. We'll ideate on a particular how might we in terms of like a speculative question and start generating some ideas within the group, as many as we can think of. Do a little bit of diagramming on that, and then we're going to figure out what we want to execute, meaning that if we were interested in something that that you were interested in, but also you think that would have tremendous impact, we're going to use something called an Eisenhower matrix to figure out where those things sit. And again, when we get to that point, I'll kind of explain what that process is. So while I'm kind of adding people in that are sitting in the participatory side of Zoom, does anyone who is currently a panelist in Mural have any questions at all before we get started? And questions are welcome because there is no short-sighted question. I'd rather you get an understanding of what we're doing before we get started.
Hi, Robert. Mehmet here. I was a bit late. Did you already send out the link to the mural?
I can. Let me go ahead and, oh, Alex actually posted it in, but let me go ahead and put it up again. And this is going to be for the panelists, just because if I give it to the participants, this thing is going to be like, it'll be a lot of ideas, but it'll be a little bit more difficult to manage in the time frame we've got. So let me go ahead and copy this. I'll bring it over into panelist side. And let me see if, yeah, Blair, I will bring you over. Just give me a minute. Let me find you on the attendee side. Right. So Blair, I just brought you over. Nora, did you want to be involved or do you want us to kind of stay on the sidelines? Looks like you want to just observe, which is fine. But if you want to change your mind, then you can let me know in the chat. But Blair, I didn't have a kind of like an ID on you over him participating. But if you want to copy and paste your URL from LinkedIn, you can do that. If you want people to know what you're all about, it's totally up to you. But it looks like we have Chiara, Abel, Daniel. We have a lot, oh, we have a lot of attendees. Okay, so we have 10 panelists altogether. I think looking at the list, everyone is in the mural, but in case you're not, just go ahead and, okay, sounds good, Nora. Just go ahead and let me know. Okay, I think we are good. Yeah, there you go. Well, there you go. That you got a website, Blair. That totally works. All right. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. I'm going to roll out the participants side and go into the mural if my browser will cooperate. So let's go to full screen. Okay, so first thing we're going to be doing is, now I'll caveat this by saying that healthcare is a huge, wide, giant topic that could cover all sorts of things. I'm not necessarily going to try to solve any particular problems in healthcare by doing this, but this is meant to be exploratory. So this is a practice part where we're going to start with things that are working in healthcare. Now, this can be from your own perspective, where you are in your locale in the world. It can be something that you think that you have a perception of based on impressions in the news or in culture. Whatever your perspective, we're just going to take a minute to kind of think of things that are working in the healthcare area. Now, the way to do this, for those who aren't familiar with Mural, is you're going to take your mouse, and in any of these gray cards here, you're just going to double click on one and start typing out what's on your mind. You can do on any available one that you're here. The only thing I would recommend is that you start in the upper left and kind of work downwards so that we don't have people that are starting in the lower right and kind of build up from there. Just because for the purposes of time, it tends to get a little messy. So there's no time clock to this. Just take a minute to kind of jog your mind a bit and think of things that are working about healthcare for either you or for what you see in the news or some advancements in medicine that you've been seeing or anything that comes to mind when you're talking about things that are working in healthcare. And again, we'll just take a couple minutes for this so you can kind of get your bearings on how to use Mural, or at least to interact with the digital cards. I think we're good so far. Let's go ahead and finish up whatever digital cards you're currently working on. If you have one selected, or just finish your thought and kind of walk through that. But once you get done with that, we're going to move over to the right-hand side. And what I'll do is I'll kind of summon people for this next one, so you kind of know where to go. I apologize, I didn't do that the first time. So in this next section here, so in this particular section, we're going to be looking on things that are challenging or not working when it comes to healthcare. Some things that are challenging are problematic. So you, in contrast to what you had just done in the previous section, you're going to take some time to think of what are some things that are flat out broken, that need improvement. And this is coming again from your own perspective. Maybe it's scratching your own itch, something that in your mind really needs some addressing. It can be broad, it can be specific, whatever you'd like to put in there. And again, we'll take a couple minutes for this. We won't use a timer. We'll just kind of see how far we get in terms of what people feel is important to kind of focus on for the rest of the session, and we'll go from there. Again, there are no right answers with this. This is just an outpouring of your perspective so that you can basically see what other people say and also what you're thinking about as well. About 1 more minute for this. Looks like we got a pretty good stack of different perspectives. I almost feel like I should have my phone here and just put a timer there, but I know it keeps me on. Okay, go ahead and wrap up what you are currently typing. Please don't start a new card. I saw that. Okay. So while people are finishing up their cards they're doing now, we're going to be taking everything that we're seeing here and the things that are challenging and problematic, and we're going to be doing some affinity diagramming. And I'll explain what that is as those cards are kind of being updated. So for everyone else that's done, I'll bring you over to the next section here. So with affinity diagramming in Mural, it's fairly simple. What you're going to be doing, and I'm going to be moving these over in a second, is taking the cards you just worked on and thinking of which 2 or 3 cards would potentially be in a certain category or a certain block. When you find 2 or 3 that are similar, you basically put them right underneath the category, and you kind of stack them in a vertical fashion. There's going to be things that we do at the end, which is uncharacterized or redundant cards. And for now, we can kind of keep these over to the side. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start taking some of the cards over here that we just did. And rather than move the horse, that horse all the way over there, really? Oh, it's the string. Okay. Let's go ahead and see if we can carry this over. I'm just going to do a copy paste. So hang on a second. Don't move the card yet. I will do it for you. Works. Yeah, let me zoom out a little bit. In fact, instead of making copies, I'll go ahead and get rid of the horse here just for a second, make them untethered. And I'll bring these over just like this. And I'll do the rest with these ones over here. Get rid of the thing. Almost done. Just give me a few more seconds. And yeah, I'll go ahead and take the arrange by interest since it's a little slammed up there. I'm going to move it down slightly. In fact, I'll move it over here. Sometimes that isn't needed. That's only if we want to gauge like what's more important than another. And it's here. Last two, they're over. That horse does not have a stable anymore. All right, so I'm going to take all of this. Let's regroup these by in a grid. All right, bring them down a little so that they're away from the categories. So again, as a group, go ahead and take 2 or 3 cards that seem to be similar. Basically, give it a category and put them underneath those. If you need to move them left or right, do so. There's room on the left or the right to kind of get that done. You should be good to go. Although I don't want it like that, but that's okay. And again, if anyone's having issues with Mural or has any questions about this process, you can come off mute as a panelist and say so. Or if you'd rather use chat, you can do that as well. And you don't have to necessarily be restricted to these 6 categories. You can actually create new ones, either on to the left or to the right. It can be as messy as you like. But go ahead and move things around as you see fit. And for reference, we will be looking for duplicates in the cards, so you don't have to necessarily delete them now. We'll just kind of see where things are. Maybe there's 2 that are very, very similar, where one could replace the other. But that's the second part of this. Now, for reference, for those who are watching what's going on here, I had a question earlier about how something like this can be used in the enterprise or used at businesses. One direct application that I've seen over and over again with something like a lightning decision jam or 60-minute meeting are team meetings. So typically in production teams that deal with either design, development, planning, there's all the work that you're doing for the business, but there's never any address on the team side and what they need. And LDJs are really good at having the team kind of say what things are really working as a team versus things that are challenging. And at the end of it, usually you have a list of different things that each team member can kind of elect themselves to be accountable for and have a task list to kind of get things done. And if you have those monthly or either quarterly, you have not only momentum with the team getting, let's say, finding the product owner or less meetings on the calendar, but you also have them much more aligned on what it takes to be more efficient and to work together better. So I've seen that over and over again with using this process. There's other applications, but that seems to be the most dominant one. Another question was whether or not this could be, is it just in Mural that you can do this, or can you do it in other things, other applications? And I've seen it done in Miro, M-I-R-O. You can also use it in Microsoft Teams. And this is also, you can use it in Trello, though Trello, it doesn't scale well, especially if you have tons of cards, and the interface selection sometimes tends to be a bit problematic. So you can go there, it can be done. And as well, if you want to do it in person, sticky notes are just fine. So it looks like we kind of landed on a kind of a default set of where these cards should go. The next step for the group that's in Mural is to look at all the cards and see if there are ones that are duplicates or things that are very close. And the way to do that and to identify them for consideration is to say, I'm not saying these two are the same. Just select two, and what you can do is hold on the Shift key and select with your mouse or your touchpad. And in Mural, it has kind of like if you're looking in the zoom, it has kind of a different way of looking and formatting them. You want to choose the color and just choose any sort of color that's light, so you can grab attention to them to say like, okay, these two things seem really, really close. Should they still exist? So for example, it looks like someone on the cost side has already kind of highlighted 3. So there's healthcare, way too expensive, high cost in the healthcare chain, and expensive insurance. So these 3 are very similar. I would say that they just address different audiences. The healthcare, way too expensive, is general. High cost in the healthcare chain seems to be about the business side. Expensive insurance seems to be on the consumer side. Now, typically when you're facilitating these, you make the initial call. If someone feels strongly in the group that they want to take out one or combine them, usually I'll say at this point, does anyone think differently or would like to offer a different option? What I would recommend is keeping all 3, but just highlighting them so that we know that they're very closely related. So if anyone who's on the panelist now would want to change this around, feel free to come off microphone and let me know. Otherwise, we can leave them as is, as separate but very closely related cards. Over here, it looks like we have 2 that are highlighted in blue, where it says, in the US, healthcare is not actually a free market system because each health insurance creates contracted networks. Even PPO weigh the market in favor of network providers. And then the other one is insurance companies determine what care is available for people. They're very similar. I think the first one's very detailed. I think because one's very deep and one's very kind of like higher level, they could coexist, but you would probably still have to, you'd have to be, when we go to voting in a little bit, you would have to be aware that they're closely related. So it'd just be a disposition more or less when you're doing voting. At least that's how I would see it. Yeah, for Wakesa, for now, we don't have to break down the cards too much. You'll see how we kind of vet that out a little bit. Software products and data, major ERH vendors are too big and proud to adopt or outdated. ERHs are broken. So they're very similar. This one's probably a cause or a much more detailed. Because someone who chooses the second one may have a different view on how they're broken rather than how this is defined. So again, should be colored similar so that you know they're the same. But depending on how the voting goes, you can choose one or the other or both if you feel real strongly about it.
What does EHR stand for?
Does anyone want to explain what EHR stands for?
So it's electronic health record systems. The major data holders in a lot of healthcare systems across the world. So typically a local government will own your data, everything they have done to you during your care visits and everything. And similar to major ERPs, this is a major dominant market. And those system categories called as EHR, electronic health record, or EMR, electronic medical records.
Thank you very much.
The one other thing that sets a EHR or an additive functionality on an EHR that's kind of above and beyond the contact management systems that are in most businesses as well as the marketing ones is that a lot of them interface with pharmacies in some regard. So that's another layer of both billing complexity and vendor complexity, because there's many different pharmacies out there as well.
Okay. There's another one here about healthcare is now tailored to specific needs and holistic view on the patient. What do they really need? Very similar, probably slightly different. I would still keep them together. I wouldn't eliminate one or the other, but I would say they're probably rightfully should be colored in the same vein. There's two, lack of time for available for patients in yellow that I'm seeing here, and doctors spend less time on patients, more on EHR. Yeah, they're super similar. But one specific one was slightly more generalized, but again, very good to kind of point it out in that regard. I think that's where we're at. So, okay, so now we kind of highlighted particular things that may be similar. What we want to do at this point is to do an initial vote. Now, the way this works in Mural is that there's a voting mechanism within it so that you can't see where people are kind of putting their cursors and they can't see your votes. But the way to determine how many votes you give everyone is usually a simple math equation. So if we look at the amount of people that are currently within the Mural now, so it looks like there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's 11, not counting me. And we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, about 40. So between the 11 people and 40, probably 5 votes each would be good, so that we kind of saturate the space with potentials, things that we want to kind of explore. So what you want to do is when I start voting, you want to vote on anything and everything in this area down here below the categories. Don't vote for the categories themselves. And Mural will give instructions on how to vote on cards, and I'll explain that when it comes up. So for those of you who are looking on the Zoom side, I'm going to go ahead and start a voting session. And within Mural, I'm going to put in, just basically as a marker, I'll put a problem selection, and everyone will get 5 votes. And let's see, let's do any member of this Mural. Okay. So what you're going to do is, in order to vote, you're going to basically select a card, a digital card that you see, to vote on it. If you change your mind and you want to take your vote off, you just hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, and you can remove the vote that way. And no one's going to be able to see your vote at all. You can basically vote as many times as you want for a particular card, but just keep in mind that skew will kind of be noticed in the results that we see at the end. So there's no time box to get the voting done. I'm just going to do a play-by-play to kind of see where people are with their votes and how fast they vote. So right now, Alex is done. He's blazing fast, got through the votes, but again, there's no rush. So kind of take your time to kind of look through all the cards, read them off, see what they mean to you, and then place your 5 votes anywhere in that area down below the categories. Once everyone's kind of done voting, we'll look at the results and kind of move on from there. I will say that there is a 30-second rule, so that if there's no votes that kind of come in after about 30 seconds, rather than having everybody wait, I'll start a countdown clock. And usually I need my phone for that. So while people are voting, I'm going to run down and get it. So I may not be visible on the screen, but give me 30 seconds, no pun intended, and I'll be right back with my phone. So just in case we have any issues with people absent for whatever reason, okay? So I'll be right back, stay there. Okay, wow, didn't do any of that. So Raul, are you having any issues voting? Were you able to get your votes in? Oh, there you go, I see it now.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Got it.
I'm missing the animal race. That was fun.
Yeah, there is an anonymous bird, so there's that. But for this particular one, I was able to add people directly. So yeah, we don't have the luxury of any anonymous animals that usually come into it.
I love saying like I'm the goat or something like that.
Yeah. Although it will be interesting to see what the voting results are, if it actually does anonymize those or if it actually puts names to certain things, but I think it still anonymizes them. All right, we're all set. I'm going to go ahead and show the results and let's see where we landed. Okay, so we had a few that were at the top. We have healthcare way too expensive. The system is profit-driven over patient health outcomes, and healthcare is not tailored to specific needs. So those are the kind of the three that were there. So normally when you're at this stage and you have a clear winner because you have 5 unique voters for this particular one with healthcare is way too expensive. Sometimes what I like to do is just to clarify that is arrange by interest. So I won't do that for this particular one just for the sake of well, actually, let's just go through the exercise really fast so that you can kind of see what that's about. So we're going to take the 3 that we just did, and I'm going to put them right over here. So this is where if the voting's really close, normally you do this, but for the sake of example, I'm just going to go through the exercise and kind of show you what that is. So take all 3 and put this into a row. Hang on, is that a row? There we go. And let me get my view on straight, and then I'll call everyone over to see what I'm doing. Okay, so usually if you have things, let's say hypothetically that these 3 all had 5 votes and 5 unique votes. They were really, really similar. So you may be stuck saying like, which one is the right one? This is a simple way of kind of gauging from the interest on where things are. And within a digital environment like Mural, it's kind of easy to do. So what everyone's going to do is this is an interest axis. So the interest from on the x-axis over here is usually it's low on the left and high on the right. So the way this works is that I'm going to take healthcare as way too expensive. Now, if you have a personal interest in what this is, what you want to do is take your mouse that you're doing and kind of circle and kind of move it over a certain section of the interest gauge on where this should be. So Alex and the bird and Blair and other people are over here. It looks like Yazan, I'm going to say the name wrong, Mehmet and Susanna are over here. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to say somewhere right around here is right where this kind of sits. So I'll put this here. This kind of in between. So next one is system is profit-driven over patient health outcomes. Now with this one, in terms of interest, is it more interesting that healthcare is way too expensive or less interesting? It's a good way of kind of going about it, but it looks like the arrows seem to be predominantly, there's 4 on this side, there's 4, there's 1 right in the middle, there's 4, well, there's 4 here, there's 4 there. Oh, interesting. So I'd say it's kind of right around, it's kind of here. I'd say it's a little bit laxing right here. Healthcare is not tailored to specific needs. In terms of in relation to these 2, where do you think this sits? It should be somewhere over here, somewhere in the middle, or somewhere on the right. And we got 3 here. We got more over here, so it definitely looks like it's over here. So this kind of looks like where it is. This one was really, really close. So maybe this has a narrative to what this is. But we'll go with healthcare is way too expensive. And I'll put it is, just to clarify that. And we're going to move this one into the next section over here. Just give me a minute. I'll do some logistics. Okay. So what we're going to be doing in this section, and I'm going to get rid of this so it's a little cleaner to look at. And I'll go ahead and summon everyone over to where I am. We're going to be reframing this in terms of a challenge. So we kind of figured that healthcare is way too expensive, but we're going to speculate rather than jumping to solutions on how we can address this. So the way to do this is something called how might we. Now, it's basically a way of again, not jumping to conclusions and kind of exploring things. This was actually invented by Procter & Gamble back in the 1970s. And essentially, you're going to just do exactly as it says. So when you say healthcare is way too expensive, an easy one to basically is how might we make healthcare less expensive. And that's me kind of covering that base so that you can't dive out and make an easy one. Now, another thing you could do is say like, how might we expose the true cost of single payer healthcare, if single payer is something that interests you. So that's a way of addressing this particular problem, but maybe reframing it in a particular fashion. Or another one could be is how might we find better ways of funding healthcare issues or anything else that kind of goes to that. But I won't seed it with my own thoughts. That's essentially how this works. So you're going to speculate on what questions we can all ask ourselves to kind of explore this particular top problem or address it in a particular fashion. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and since I only put like 2 rows, I think I need to give you guys some more, or y'all, I should say. I'll go ahead and put these all here. Take one over here. And I won't put a time frame on this just because these can tend to be very saturated with different thoughts. I'll just wait until we get to close to 4 rows of being done, and we can kind of work from there, unless people feel strongly about which direction we should take things. And again, you can do that either by coming off microphone or just saying something in the chat, and I can look at it when I switch my focus. Now, there's an alternative way of kind of going to how might we use that's more around, it aligns better with testing, and I think for people that do design sprints, they're familiar with this. Instead of how might we, you ask, can we? So it's kind of thinking about both the possibility of going in a direction, but checking that against your available resources or what your company can reasonably do, or what you have time for. So it's not just open-ended like how might we's are, it's a little bit more, shall we say, constrained. So you do have that option. I wouldn't necessarily put them both together in the same space. For the purposes of this kind of presentation, how might we serves as a more broad kind of scope and thought around where you could go with things. For those of you looking for room, I'm just going to put borders on the ones that are still they're still available for someone to sound off on. Once those are done, we'll take the black borders off, just in case you're looking for more room. One other tip to note is that these can get very unruly very fast if you have a large amount of people online doing this. I learned the hard way that nobody wants to affinity diagram 200 cards. I wouldn't want to myself. So that's kind of why you're seeing a constraint here on the amount of cards we are dealing with in this section. And it will be the same for ideation. And for those who are wondering if, in terms of like the time that we normally take to do this, where we are in the midst of things, we're actually doing very good on time. Normally I allocate 60 minutes for this. And for the amount of people that are joining this, we're in really good shape. So we got a few more how might we's to see if anyone fills those in. If not, then we will move on to the next section. One thing you can do if you are a participant in this is if you have questions about the process and things that pop up while you're waiting, chat is a perfect outlet for you to kind of ask those questions, because then I can address them in between these times where we're waiting for people to kind of take care of their thoughts and put those to digital form. And someone asked privately how many of these I've done. I have lost track. Officially, I don't keep track anymore. It's just do them because they're fun. Always like seeing perspective. Okay, so Mardea, and there we go. Perfect. Okay, we've got ourselves a batch of 32 cards. Let's go over here and bring them over to the lower left. We have a bit more room to work with this time around. And again, this is going to be, this is going to look very familiar because we're going to be, again, doing some affinity diagramming. So same concept as before. You have a set amount of cards to work with. Go ahead and arrange them in a fashion that makes sense to you. Now, this could be something that if the group wanted to, that you could try a different way of doing it. Instead of doing it vertically, there's something called cluster affinity or cluster diagramming. I think it's cluster affinity diagramming, I'm not sure. So instead of putting them in vertical order, you can basically put them in groups like this. So you kind of put them in batches. So you kind of like just basically put them in the same space, and then you drag down a category where they're here. Now, the only reason why I bring that up is some people think better that way, but I found that through doing this repeatedly, people like the horizontal vertical metaphor. So just to show you that there is the possibility of doing that, but for this exercise, just go ahead and do exactly like you did last time and go ahead and arrange vertically the cards that seem to make sense and give them categories. And again, no time constraint on this. We're doing really good on time. We should maybe go right over, but that's about it. And then we'll save the last half an hour for introductions and questions and speculation on different ideas that would come up, and we'll have maybe more interaction, more meaningful conversation around what comes here. One question I gotten in privately was, can this be applied to something else besides healthcare? And the answer is yes. Last year, we did one for financial planning. We did another one for creative leadership. Really, you can swap out the topic for a lot of different things you may be interested in, and getting a lot of different people from, in this case, different countries, different perspectives, and have them center on a particular topic. I know that in February, we're going to be doing one for childcare. And I think in March, if I recall correctly, there's going to be one for real estate, perhaps? I'm not sure. But there's a lot of interest in this. I'll continue to do them every month, along with some other activities we're planning. Also had a question about the Global Virtual Design Sprint and when that's happening. That's going to be happening in May, for the first 3 weeks of May. We will be doing virtual facilitation, sorry, say it over. Virtual Design Sprint training for facilitators, but we're going to make it explicit for just that audience. We did a little bit of it last time, and it was about 2 weeks worth of learning, but this time around, I think we're going to devote a whole month, and we're going to be probably prioritizing our time, people that want to learn it, with the anticipation of potentially making it a program where, not certification, but to get people jump started on doing it on their own. There's a separate thread going on in the community about having a body of work act as the proof that somebody can do what they do, and using that as a catalyst for getting people in front of others then to showcase what they can do, not only in the facilitation space, but also virtually. So that's coming up in the future. Okay, looks like we're more or less there. Again, like we did before, colors, particular cards you think are very close, that we just need to be mindful of when we go into a voting stage. For the redundant cards, you can leave those there if they are redundant. You don't need to necessarily like kind of color those. We're looking at particular nuances within the categories that are in the uncategorized cards all the way to the left. And as people highlight them in color, I will kind of go over and look at those. The two that says, how might we lower the cost of healthcare overall? And how might we lower the cost in the healthcare supply chain? They're very, very similar. Just one is broad, one's more specific. I'd keep both, but again, it's very good that they were highlighted because yes, they are super similar in terms of like the overall structure and what they're addressing. Let's see if we can find any other ones. It's not a big deal if we can't. It's just to get familiar with the content of the cards ahead of time before you go into a voting schematic. Purple, how might we help people get the care they deserve when they are in need? And the other one is, how might we make it accessible to everyone that needs it cheaply? I think it means healthcare. One is probably execution, and the other one is, yeah, I think they're in the same vein, but yeah, they're right. It's right to be colored in the same space. We got some greens. How might we introduce prevention as a valuable behavior in healthcare? How might we promote prevention over expensive care, and how might we prevent healthcare issues? How can we help here to reduce costs? Yeah, all in the same. It's kind of like a reflection of the category, but they are. I would say 1, 3, and 4 are definitely worded pretty close. I wouldn't eliminate one or the other in terms of a redundant card, though. Right? Okay, so let's go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, close to 30. So let me do 30, we'll do 4. I'll have 4 votes on this one. And again, just vote on anything below the categories. You can skip the redundant cards. You don't have to put your votes there. This one is going to be the how might we, and we'll do 4. Go ahead and place your votes where you'd like. I won't be voting as per I'm the facilitator and I don't want to kind of bend things either way. But vote on the 4 that you would like to carry forward to think of ideas about. So this is, whatever you're going to be voting here is what you potentially would want to do a design sprint on, what you would want to ideate on to think of ideas, what would be really interesting to explore in terms of solutions. That's probably where you should key in your votes in terms of purpose. Well, I did have one question about if you're doing an in-person sprint and you want to try to anonymize the votes rather than going up to a board and putting checkboxes and dots, what do you tend to do? One thing that I've done that adds a little bit more time to facilitators in terms of logistics than not is actually get a shoebox and basically cut a slit in it, like a very small opening, or you can just do a flap. And people basically write in their vote on a Post-it note and they put it in like they're voting, like in high school voting for a senior for council. But what it does do is it anonymizes it so that the facilitator pops out a note and then puts a check mark next to something. And like I said, it's a good way of kind of anonymizing things so that people don't recognize others as long as the facilitator doesn't show the writing. But I found that to be pretty effective, and you can do dramatics. So if there's one that's really close, then you flip out the vote and say like, is this the one that's going to make or break this solution sketch? You can have fun with it. But that's a workaround in case people are very, I'd say, sensitive around certain people basically going up and putting just large checkboxes or huge smiley faces. It's usually a facilitator's call. We, excuse me, we have a few people left voting. Mardea is taking her time, being very, very careful about what she's voting for. Another question is Mural free? And it is to a certain extent. It's free for 30 days. They do request that you have a license to use it beyond that point. As part of the GBDS, we have guest accounts that I use almost all the time. But for your own personal use or for enterprise use, I think there's different pricing schemes. But yeah, you can try it out for 30 days. Plus, you can try out all the different templates that they have for free online. Mardea, are you having any issues voting, or are you good? Because sometimes Mural will show that you have votes left, but you already completed everything you're doing. So where are you at? You can come off the microphone if you're muted. Oh, hang on. Oh, so Abel also said, if you're a consultant or a design thinking practitioner, Mural gives out free licenses. Well, I did not know that. Very good to know, Abel. So you may want to talk to Mural direct. Okay, wow, that was fast. Our day wasted no time. Okay, let's see what the votes are all about. Give me a minute. Constantly have to move the Zoom bar out of the way. Let's see where we landed on this one. Oh, we have one in particular. How might we introduce prevention as a valuable behavior in healthcare? You know, I looked at that and thought the same thing. I was like, that's interesting. And then a close one that was second was, how might we promote prevention over expensive care? So it's interesting how those two are related, and they were both voted in the same one. But I think we got a winner with this first one with 6 votes. So let's go ahead and move in that direction. So I'll take this. And by the way, in Mural, for those who know how to use it, it's never a good idea to move the source card out of a voting block, because sometimes Mural forgets the origin of it, especially if you change the nature of it. So it's always good to copy and paste into something else that you're going to be using things. So give me 30 seconds for logistics, please. And I'm going to go ahead and copy over the original problem so we can start a narrative. By the way, for those of you that may be constricted on time, I know there were a couple people that said they had to leave at the top of the hour. I'm going to try to make sure we get to the ideation, or we get to the last stage before that happens. So if you need to jet after we get done with these two, you can always leave your feedback for me direct in the Mural, or you can email me outside of this effort and let me know what you think of what we did today, and whether or not I was a good facilitator, or do I need to go back to school. No, I'm kidding. I'm okay, but I can always use improvement. Okay, so our top problem right now is healthcare is way too expensive. I agree. How might we, and we speculated on that, is how might we introduce prevention as a valuable behavior in healthcare? So that's what you're going to be basically ideating on, is trying to answer this question. How might we introduce prevention as a valuable behavior in healthcare? You have 4 rows, 32 cards. Everyone on the call can basically put in their ideas, but it doesn't have to be rapid, so to speak. But put in things, either they can be crazy, bold, just out of the park, like things that you would never consider. You want to kind of go for bold and interesting and just amazing, like things that normally would be like, you don't know how it could be done, but it would be great if it could be done. That's usually how design sprints that's where they shine. So kind of hedge on that, be more in that space, but do try to address the question of, how might we introduce prevention as a valuable behavior in healthcare? You can also be sarcastic, you can be slightly offensive, whatever you'd like to do. But put in your thoughts in this space down here for rapid ideation, and I'll go ahead and summon everyone so we're looking at the same thing. Once all 32 cards are close to being done or are done, we'll go ahead and move and do one more round of affinity diagramming. We won't do any more, I swear. That'll be the last one. You'll almost feel like you can apply to be a librarian at this point. I can put books in this shelf on this thing, the Dewey Decimal System. I know everything. Now, as an alternative to affinity diagramming, if you do not want to, if you feel like you don't need to go there and you're short on time, you can straight out vote. You don't need to necessarily do the diagramming if you don't need to. Some people will kind of hesitate because there could be a splitting of the vote for similar cards, which does happen, but it just depends on getting the temperature of the group and what you feel would work best. And by the way, there is no judgment on ideas, because people aren't going to know that where your idea came from if you're working on your own. So again, you can put whatever you like here, and it's going to be totally fine as long as you're not, you don't cuss a lot, because foul language doesn't tend to kind of convince people. It just kind of makes it so that's more like, whoa, all right. So one question is there ever been a situation where the problem that's been voted on and the ideas that are generated are totally different? And the answer is yes, because sometimes when you start diving into the problem itself, especially if it's general, your solution you may find or your ideas tend to be granular on certain boundaries of that overall problem. And it's not a bad thing. It's just the fractal nature of how people think sometimes. So when you come across that, you just have to have a conversation about the story that you're telling, the problem, how might we, and then the ideas, and see how it flows, and where you could potentially take things after you get to the ideas in relation to solving that problem. So it's kind of squaring the circle in a way. We're just about done. We have a few more cards to go. And once that's done, we'll kind of move that back down to our last magical affinity diagramming section, and we will think of which particular ones have the most impact and that we have the most interest in as a collective group. So one more question came in is, how do I know when these are going on in the future? So there's a few ways. I post in LinkedIn a lot. So usually if there are new LDJs or events that correspond to online exploration of ideas and experiments, they'll definitely be posted there. We have a Facebook group for virtual design sprint events that you can join, and I can include that link in the follow-up to this session. I also have a mailing list that I'll sometimes put in some things that are coming up that people can be interested in. Those are probably the primary three right now that I'm using to kind of bring everything together. Okay, so let's see. We have almost everyone done, I believe. We have two that are still selected. One by Wakesa and another one by... Oh, hang on. What are you doing, Wakesa? Don't you create that? You're creating another one. Okay, I'm going to bring these down here and drag it down to affinity diagramming. So hang on a second. Let me back up a little bit. Move this interest down a tad, a skosh, so that it's not in everyone's way. And I'll go ahead and drag the rapid ideation cards all the way down here so that you have some room. Same thing as last time, go ahead and start organizing by category. And this will be the last one we do before we go into exploring which ideas really appeal to us. So Blair Rorani, who is, and I hope I said your last name right, I'm very bad with saying names, but Blair mentioned that another in-person voting tip is to ask everyone if they are ready to vote and do a 1, 2, 3 vote to reduce the number of people who are influenced by other votes. That's a good one too. Alex wrote in about the templates, include the one from GVDS. So Alex, you have to clarify that question so I can understand what you're talking about. It may have been in the context of something I answered earlier, but just when you get done with what you're doing here, just reiterate it and I can revisit it. One of the advantages of doing this particular exercise online is that it can be recorded. So as you can probably tell if you're in Zoom, this is not only being recorded to the cloud in Zoom, but I marked it as on demand. So anyone who registered for this event can wait until the weekend and they can replay it basically by hitting a button with an email that they get and viewing it as it's happening. It's also really good if you have a recording for people who weren't there, but that have a stake in the outcome of what you're doing. So if they want to, they can fast forward to the very end. They can look at particular sections. They can actually leave comments within the recording. I found it's been really helpful for clients, especially if I want to point out particular things and discussions that happen within a sprint or an activity like this. It looks like we're nearly done. Just moving a few things around. And again, if it helps, if you have a few stray cards, I always like putting everything in the uncategorized cards, because then you have the left to right comparison between what's already categorized. So it helps, especially if there's like a bunch of cards that are still kind of lying around, being lazy, not doing their job and getting in a category or being by themselves, which is fine. For most facilitators, this is probably something that you already know, but you never want to particularly comment on something that's still being worked out, whether it's a card or a vote. I find that even an errant kind of comment can skew the perspective of whatever's being worked on, and people are kind of sensitive to the person that's doing the most talking. So especially when you're doing something like this, you just concentrate on the process and you're in a better place. Okay, I think we're good. Again, one last time, let's look at anything that's similar and just color code it. The uncharacterized cards can also be part of that. Oh yeah, one thing I should point out within Mural is that if you're looking to kind of align a whole bunch of cards together in a row, I always like kind of highlighting a whole bunch of them. And within the sorting arrangements tool within Mural, it's like kind of like the pop-up one. In this case, I'm going to arrange them into a column, and it automatically sorts them really nice and kind of keeps them spaced the way they're supposed to. I'll do it one more time for the punitive one over here, and put it into a column. And generally that only happens if in this situation where you have like 10 or 15 cards in a stack. So let's zoom in a little bit on this yellow. Looks like there's two. This is free Fitbit for all and body health values scanner available for everyone. Yeah, one specific around the approach or the product, and the other one is kind of in the same vein. So one's a little bit more generalistic, but one's an applied product, which makes sense. By the way, we are 5 minutes over, just so people know. Variable care rate based on your preventative data and system similar to credit rating. If you didn't take care of yourself, you pay more. Yeah, those are very similar, but I think that just the solution is slightly different. And introduce a personal score that publicly shows your prevention measures. Okay, yeah, they're all kind of in the same space. So anything else that we're seeing that could be considered very, very similar? If not, let's go ahead and do another vote. Let's see what we got. Just do a quick check. We have still have 11, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Let's do 4 votes again. This one is all about ideas. Start a voting session, just basically call it ideas. I'll give everyone, let's do 5 votes. No, let's do 4. Let's do 5. Step 5. 5 votes, put them anywhere on the cards below the categories, your favorite 5 ideas. Now the purpose behind this vote would probably be you're angling to do either a workshop or a design sprint or exploratory aspect of whatever you're selecting. So if you were to explore this solution in a group of other individuals and other professionals, what one would you want to take forward into a more involved application, whether it's a design sprint or otherwise, to explore a real solution? Again, no right answers. This is just to kind of showcase the process. There are some people that vote really, really fast. That's not a bad thing. It's just like, you know it. Bip, bap, bip, vote done. I'm done. You just sit there and or do something else. One person asked, do you allow breaks during these sessions? Usually for this type of thing, you want to keep it so that right now, normally at the top of the hour, the reason why I'm mentioning is usually if there is a second act to this is usually the time I'll go, okay, let's take 10, 15 minutes to check emails, check your phone, you know, walk, stretch your legs, get out from the seat and see what else is out there. You know, for me, it's rain, so there's not really much to see. One more vote and we're gonna wrap it up. Oh, there we go. Bird changed the vote at the last minute. So, we'll count the 10 minutes. Oh no, so Alex asked the question of whether or not the Mural account that was mentioned that was free includes the templates. No, you just have to ask those ahead of time. Or you have to find those and basically add them to your account. You should be able to use them. So we'll end the voting session. And we've got a few, we got a number of them that are basically all there, like a number of 3 votes in unique voters as well as votes. But there's one that stood out. It says subsidize the cost of healthy food and exercise options, because it looks like somebody put all 4 there. So that's slightly skewed. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through that interest exercise, especially with these 5 to get out 2. So we want to have at least 3 options. So I'm going to take the 8th one here as well as the other 3s, and we'll do a quick kind of vetting of some of these and see where they fall. I think I've got all of them. Yep. Okay. Let's go down here. We're going to arrange by interest. Setting. And let's go in a row. Okay. So we'll do this really fast. Again, the way to do this is, and I'll bring everything over, is essentially, I'm going to put it in the center. You use your mouse and tell me whether or not your interest for you is either to the left or the right of this. So we'll start out with an app to help parents raise children with healthy habits. Put your mouse cursor and circle it somewhere either on the left or on the right, left in low interest and high interest on the right. And I'll kind of try to find a healthy average of all that, which looks like it's about here. Okay. Peer support, where would this go in relation to this one on the interest gauge? More along the lines there, I'd say. Peer support's going to be down here. Nobody has interest in peer support. I'm kidding. Just having fun. Educate students through school system. Where should this go in relation to these 2? We got 3 over here, 4. So it looks like it's kind of over here a bit. Let's get somebody around here, slightly over. Get rewarded for being healthy. Where does this go? Oh, there's more over there. There's 5. Looks like it's, yeah, it's right around here. I'd say it's kind of slightly over this one. Make people see how they are doing all the time. What is this? Where should this go? This is, well, there's 4 over here, there's 3 over here. It's kind of right around here. We got 2 more, then we're good to go, I think. This here. Subsidize the cost of healthy food and exercise options. Where does this go? People are kind of saying it's more along the lines over here. 1 and 2 are way over here. I'm going to kind of put it here. And then thinking about traditional medicine. There's, yeah, it's kind of over here. Okay. So real quick, we got these 3. So we're going to take these 3 right here, and I'm going to bring them over to this section here. Give me a minute. Basically, I am transferring these 3 cards into colors. And that's purposeful for the next stage of what we're doing here. So now that we've got the top problem, thank you whoever did that, healthcare is way too expensive. The how might we was, where's that sucker? There it is. So let's go through the storyline so far. We started with healthcare is way too expensive. How might we introduce prevention as a valuable behavior in healthcare? And we came up with 3 particular aspects. Get rewarded for being healthy, an app to help parents raise children with healthy habits, and educates students through the school system. So the way this works on the effort impact interest matrix is you can kind of tell where this kind of falls. So if you're thinking of interest on the x-axis, excuse me, anything on the left is low interest, anything on the right is high interest. But you're also thinking about impact. So on the healthy side, let's say for this one, if you're thinking about it having a high impact and high interest, that it would land something in here. Over here are participant votes. What you want to do is look at 3 dots and basically put your name in there. So double click on one. So say if you're Mardea, you put Mardea here. And, oh, I spelled it wrong. I'm sorry. But let's say it's my name, Robert. And you put that into all 3 dots. What you want to do is basically take the dot that you just put your thing in and then start at the center. If you have a high interest in, say, getting rewarded for being healthy as a possible thing to explore, you want to put it more towards the right. If you have less of an interest, you want to put it more towards the left. If you think there's more of an impact in getting rewarded for being healthy in terms of like something to explore in a design sprint, then you probably want to put the impact higher on the y-axis. Or if you think that it's interesting but not impactful, you want to put it down the left. And there are no right or wrong answers with this. This is just something to gauge interest overall. And you can do so. You do the same thing with the yellow dot for the app to help parents raise children with healthy habits, and then the gray circle for educate students through the school system. So go ahead and put those where you think those should go in relation to everything here. Once the dots kind of start resting, we can take a look at what people have said, and we'll spend the last 15 minutes to make introductions if you'd like to introduce yourself, and your thoughts about the process and how the voting kind of went out, and if anything here interests you. If you don't have any dots here, if you're looking for some extra ones, you can go ahead and copy and paste ones that exist and just put your name in those. So especially if there's one here, I'll go ahead and for Wakesa, I'll put this over here where your name's not Tomas, and I'll just wipe that out. And I'll bring everybody over. I apologize for this section. Okay. So Blair, you asked the question, how do you know who voted, seeing one person voted X for a single card? In Mural, you don't. You just basically know that one person put all 4 votes there. So that was part of the reason why I went over to the interest axis to kind of vet those out a bit to get the top 3. Interest versus effort. It's not necessarily effort because the effort in and of itself is probably going to be mixed in with the actual process. What I'm trying to gauge for each idea is how much impact the particular idea has based on the perception of the individual. So there's one thing to have an interest in it, but the impact doesn't necessarily correlate with interest. So that's the reason why we kind of skewed more towards the idea of measuring impact by what people think could actually happen. Now, with some of these ideas, they're a bit more general, so they probably need a little bit more vetting or a little bit more like distinction. But this is just to showcase how people can basically put their perspective in on how things could be impactful versus not, even though they may have an interest in it. So before we get into Q&A and discussion, really quick, it looks like for the, let's say, get rewarded for being healthy, it looks like people think it could be impactful. There's generally a right hand leaning towards an interest. But maybe that's basically a way where that's a jumping off point for where you can go into further exploration on what that exactly means. But that seems to be at least the leader in this in between these 3. The gold seems to be leaning more towards the less interested side in terms of like an app to raise children with healthy habits, at least from a general perspective. And then on the blue, on the educate students through the school system, there's definite interest up here. But then conversely, there's also less interest here, but there's a general idea that that's going to make a bit of an impact. So it's kind of split the group into two different groups. So at least that's what I'm seeing here. For those who are panelists who have been patiently waiting to speak all this time, if you do have any comments, go ahead and introduce yourself by name. and you can even say what you do or where you come from or anything else, and then go ahead and give your commentary around either the results here or something else that you'd like to talk about in this part of the process. And if I don't hear anybody talking, I'll call it a name. So that'll be the default. But if anyone has anything they'd like to say, please come off mic and speak up.
Like what the school system and so it's Alex from Germany. What they do in the German school, in the German system is like a decade before they tried to educate the parents with healthy food, but that did not really work out well. They stayed with the habits, and now they are going to educate the children in the school, and they bring home all these ideas and disrupt the house. Yeah, the parents. I see that in many examples, and it seems to be pretty good working when the children demand healthy food and start getting vegetarian and vegan, which is like a super trend here in Germany.
So, Alex, do you have any URLs or any like articles that you've seen online where you can cut and paste those into Mural for people to look at? Because
I can look up something. I can look up.
In the time that we have, it's not a big deal to count.
Yeah.
It sounds interesting.
I can validate what Alex is saying because I don't know about nationwide in the US, but I know in the area where I grew up in central New Jersey, our community was extremely focused on building healthy habits by directly involving the children in everything, I must have looked at the food pyramid, 5 or 6 times a school year every year of my schooling. So I wouldn't say that it is completely ineffective, but what I've come to understand now is that you're looking at changing, habits take on average, 21 days of very intense focus to build. And then you're looking at building habits on 2 fronts. So you're educating one cohort to build a habit, and they in turn have to educate someone else, and you're having the children educate the parents. So when change comes from bottom up, it's harder to affect. It's not impossible, but it's very much harder to affect.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to spend a little bit of time on the get rewarded for being healthy. There's a couple of people that were way over to the right in terms of interest. There was Yazith and Susanna. So in terms of in relation to the other options that are here, Yazith, it looks like that was the one that interested you the most.
Yeah. There's a particular reason behind that decision, especially since I work for a software product company in healthcare. We operate in Northern Europe region, even though I'm based in Sri Lanka. We have our development arm here, but most of our products are in Northern Europe. According to some independent vendors, it's like we are the market leader. And I have to be very honest, as like big software product organizations who have been in this space, we look at preventive care in more like we never take it as serious as we should be. The best we do it, we just enable our product so that people can import data from various devices. So in that sense, I would like to put my time on if times awards to build this reward system on data we get. So it's more like personal biasness from what we do, what our main job is, rather than so other 2 options sounds good, but interest wise I feel like I'm more motivated towards using that data we have, data people generate, and maybe build some reward system around it.
Okay. And Susanna, I called you out because there were 2 dots that you had put into the upper right-hand side, but the one for getting rewarded for being healthy was a little bit ahead of the other one, though you felt that educating students through the school system had a higher impact. Do you want to make a comment on either one of those?
I think that both ideas were very interesting. For me, the one about get rewarded for being healthy is a bit more playful and maybe something that could work in certain situations, but not all. And it could be a nice trigger to start helping people get motivated and aware about what's actually happening and what is prevention. So the gamification idea, I think it's fun. And then educating students through school system, I think is a topic that's always important. Maybe it's not something new, but just putting a bit more focus on this in our school systems could be impactful, as we're seeing now with sustainability. I mean, talking to kids nowadays, you really see that there's a shift in what's being taught, and maybe this is not a topic that's being addressed enough because it is something complicated and complex. But I think through healthy habits and through engaging kids, it could be a nice way to address this problem.
One thing that I want to clarify based on what I said earlier is that whatever is focused on, whenever there is focused on teaching children, recognize that it is a long-term return on investment. So those folks who are, those children who are getting that education are not going to be consumers for 20 years or so. That's the long haul game that Apple played through the 80s and 90s. And now, there's a lot of millennials investing in Apple products. The one other thing that I'm going to try and put as delicately as possible is there is definitely commercial value in building systems that will gamify healthcare and whatnot, but do realize that that market segmentation is essentially, it's a first world market. It's a first world problem to solve, whereas healthcare being way too expensive is something that really affects everyone. So these solutions presented here will definitely help parts of the market, but not the entire population.
A good point. Well, Kessie, you're off mic. Did you want to say something?
And you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Now, the challenge is I think we have to solve for one market at a time, because for healthcare, I also feel education for us is for kids is that can work for us, because I look at the market right now, and in terms we are now seeing lifestyle diseases. So there's a thing about food that we consume. There's a conversation around that in terms of behavior and consumption. No, we're just getting into the consumption culture, and guys are just, so in terms of, I don't know how rewarding people to be healthy can be seen right now, because the people who stand to be rewarded for being healthy are almost the people who are dependent on the healthcare system because of their lifestyle already. So I feel just investing in kids, in school-going children, and also gamifying the experience. Because I'll share this week, I was privileged to be part of a humanitarian experience that's playing around with gaming, like game-based learning. And I saw most of those games that they were shopping for our context were like for mental health. And so the gamifying experience is already here, and they are very simple games. They're like chat games. People along you on WhatsApp,
Right.
and it's like teaching you stuff, serious or something. So I feel in terms of games and also young learners.
Right. We have a few minutes more. Tomas, I believe you're still on the call. Yeah. So you were another one that said you were you thought that get rewarded for being healthy was something that had some viability or somewhere we can go, but you also were someone that voted for an app to help parents raise children with healthy habits. I mean, what were your thoughts around your votes?
A habit is something that in the modern world we can't substitute the difficulty of changing habits for adults nowadays, because we're always under pressure. So if we invest in kids, even if the results comes with 10 years from now, you're changing the society. And that's what I think. That was why I chose that.
Got it. Okay. And Blair, if you want to come on mic for a sec, you had a couple that you felt were really high impact and you had an interest. Those were the educating students through the school system, that same app to raise children with healthy habits. What were your thoughts around those?
Yeah, so my iPad battery is super low, so I'll just use my mic only. So with the education one, I think our kids get taught what to eat and that exercise is good for you. But there's almost like an uneducation that's needed, that going to the doctor shouldn't be like that normal or that common for most people, unless you've got a very severe injury or something, very serious. But if we teach them that like the way to be healthy isn't just to get medicine from a bottle or a pill, it's to eat food and do other stuff, then that sort of changes the mindset of the next generation. And then the app, I think most people are on their phones all the time, so that's a good channel to reach people for any kind of communication or influencing, and regardless of the subject matter.
Very nice. Okay, thank you all for that perspective and feedback. We are at time, so I'll say that I'm going to follow up with everyone here on the results of this. It'll be a really short email that asks what you thought of the process, if you have any feedback. Also, there's going to be an opportunity to carry this forward if you wanted to work with some of the people that you were doing this exercise with as a panelist, to basically take forward the ideas around basically addressing the expense of healthcare and exploring it in some sort of process, whether that be a prototype or a solution sketch, but there'll be an opportunity to kind of move this forward if you have a genuine interest. Otherwise, I'd like to thank all the panelists that took the time out, this 90 minutes, to kind of go through this entire process of a virtual LDJ. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope it was well worth the time you spent here. For those everyone that are on Zoom or on YouTube, again, you can basically see the replays of those, Zoom on demand, or YouTube will have it as soon as I get done making a few edits in terms of the titles. Like I had mentioned, everyone who was participating, or the majority of people, are listed up here in the upper left. You have access to the mural, so if anytime you want to network with any of the individuals that you heard speaking today, or that if you have a question around something that they brought up and you want to carry that forward, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm just going to look really fast to see if there are any last minute things in chat. Abel says thank you. Gary says thank you, Robert. No worry about the participation. I'm just glad you were here. Chris had a comment. And Blair's like, yep, everyone's staying off. So, okay, everyone, thank you very much for coming. We're going to shut things down. Again, I'll do some follow-up and excuse me. I think I need to get some tea because I've been talking too much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much for coming. And, thanks a lot for the perspective. It was really, really interesting for me. So take care, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, Rob.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Do-do.
Mm.